Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Help the Helpers. And I am so delighted that we will have Abby Wu. And we've heard from Abby several times. We know Abby, but I want to say as an introduction, I don't know anybody who has such a poetic grasp of embodiment and that synthesis of uh, poetry and embodiment. And so um, Abby is venturing out into all kinds of new territories and training as a therapist now. And I'm very, very eager to hear from her. So welcome. And Abby, you could add anything to the introduction that I left out.
Thank you, Lynn. That's really generous of you of an introduction. Um, yeah, I want to say, first of all, my gratitude to Lynn because she's the one who brought me into the world of embodiment in 2017. So,
Wow, 2017. Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
it was like January or February of 2017, I think. So it's
And
been
if anybody is interested in seeing Abby and I when we were young in 2017, we have videos on YouTube of my focusing with Abby.
and focusing really just transformed my life and really gave me the language of the body. So everything that I'm going to be sharing is going to come from that place. Um, yeah, so I thank you for your time and being here with me as I share some of my stories. I'm going to share a PowerPoint and then go from there. So, what I'm sharing today may be something you already know or have experienced, or maybe it's something completely new. But I want to talk about energy and fields today. I know a lot of us here are working with individuals um, in a healing or helping capacity, and many of us work through the body. So, my personal experience is the more material that I've digested personally through my body, the more my body became porous as the contractions and the trauma has been released. And that has also brought about a new form of sensitivity as the system became more open and interactive with the environment outside of me. So from like a more enclosed system to become a more open, energetically perceiving system. And that has opened up a way of learning and intaking information that is outside of purely just the brain. And so a lot more information is coming in through the energetic sense. Before the system was closed and numb, and now it's open and perceiving and in interaction. So I will be talking about what is a field, and then how do we really sense the field, and the body and environmental interaction, as Jinlin talks about in the process model, but through my personal lens and through my personal experience. And then lastly, about trauma and its interaction working with the field. So an energy field is made up of thought forms, emotions, and undigested experiences from the past. And it's made up of, um, it's like a field of information that has an emotional charge that is being carried around and emitted. And it could be um, people, land, history, spirit, and it's just a subtle collective atmosphere that is surrounding something or a place. And the field has like an emotional, energetic, it's like a information container, and it really shapes the feeling of a place and the possibility of a space. And, in common language, we hear people talk about it a lot, like it's a vibe of a place or a vibe of a person, and it influences behaviors and emotions in a great way. And how do we really sense energy fields? The way I personally pick up on energy fields these days is through both bodily and somatic experiences, which aren't separate. So, in a sense, really, we're talking about the felt sense, like using the felt sense to pick up on the energetic interactions of everything around us. For example, it's the constrictions and the tensions, or feeling like head tightness, or feeling particular emotions, like emotions have different felt textures to it. For example, fear feels really fizzy and sharp and can be kind of a jarring feeling. And then, grief can feel really heavy and really slow and really dense. And this is like a downward pull feeling of the body.
Mm.
Or rage is like a feeling of like this fiery fizziness that's like, and it's a burning, it can be a burning sensation. So the way that energy lives can be felt in the body through these somatic and emotional textures, and often they're quite linked to each other. And then sometimes when you walk into a space, you can feel a space is dense or a space is light, or there's darkness, like a heaviness to something, or like a space if you ever go to a temple, right? Um, or a monastery, or a church, even sometimes. Like there's just like a lot of spaciousness and clearness and coherence in the space. And if you go to if any of you have visited places like the Holocaust or the Japanese bombings, like there's a different texture of history that lives in that space still as well, that can be palpably felt by those who are sensitive. So, in terms of, yeah, this is where I want to share a little bit about my personal story. And um, Jinlin talks a lot about body environmental interaction, the process model. He says it's like a process of a flow through where the inside and the outside is one cohesive process. And this environment includes our body with the larger environment around us. And this has been my experience as well. The body is in constant interaction with fields of other people. I know Lynn has talked a lot about relational fields and the body being an environment. As a healer and therapist, our bodies are environments for interaction for the clients. We are the environment, and oftentimes it's like the field that which we carry creates a conditional container for the person to step into that then creates like healing for them. And then in my personal experience, the same is true in terms of energies. It's being a signature of homes, of objects, of lands, of places, and also countries and of cultures as well. So the field can influence and color me as I interact with it. So I'll talk about, we talked a little bit about people already. So I'll talk about homes. In my personal experience, I think I felt that homes can carry energies of the owners or people who frequently live there. For example, if it's a home that the people who constantly live there carry a lot of undigested anger or fear or any strong emotional signature, then that energy will permeate the spaces within the homes. And the if I'm in that space for a while, then will come into my system, and that emotional charge will color and change my personal experience within that home. And it'll affect my thinking and affect my mood and also affect my interaction. So in addition to like the personal field, I'm also being a porous container for the larger container of the home energy to come through me. And that also creates a form of interaction. And sometimes I noticed some homes, there's a lot of emotional, energetic debris and charge behind the home. And I think that can also sometimes be true as well in the person's energy field because we're concealing our emotions and not wanting it to be seen. So we conceal on our backside. And so we also conceal our home's emotions sometimes on the backside of the home, like in the backyard or, on the deck. And there's like a particularly thicker emotional charge in my personal experience. This is anecdotal, of course. And then I also have found that like there's objects that carry a lot of emotional charge and energy. And this is true for like walls and floors, but especially for the object that we use the most. Like, for example, if I'm constantly using a cup, then that will hold my personal emotional energetic charge. And I found this especially true for beddings and things that, maybe we're digesting a lot of things when we're sleeping emotionally. But I've been in homes or hotels before where sleeping on the bedding will leave me like with this really shrill form of fear. And then it'll feel very jarring and I wouldn't know what to do with it. And also didn't feel like my own. So then, you know, the only reason I can tell that it's not my own afterwards is because like either I leave the bedding setting or I change the set of beddings. And then so then I know that the bedding itself is actually carrying the emotional charge of the person who used it the most previously. And so in that way, like objects also has this sort of capacity to hold energetic charge and be a container for this sort of energetic sentience. And the same is true for land. I think, from my perspective, in modern life, we kind of see Earth, even though it's not everybody, but like I think the normative view is that Earth is not really alive and it's more of an object to be manipulated and dominated. Um, but from my experience, it feels like Earth is very alive and also in interaction with us. And a lot of the native cultures still operate from this worldview of seeing Earth as animate and there being like a Earth sentience and consciousness, and there's like a deep animate force that lives in the Earth. And my experience around that is certain places carry particular energies. Um, there's one story of I lived on the Big Island for 6 months in Hawaii, and there's one particular part of the Big Island near Hawaii that there's an airport there, and near the airport is just these beautiful cliffside ocean views that is really gorgeous. And one day I decided to go and explore there, and I was like, oh yeah, it's an airport. That's not a problem at all. Like I'm sure it's, just like a wonderful place. But as soon as I stepped on this piece of land next to the airport, my body started to like viscerally react. And there was like this sense of sourness in the air and this putridness um and then I started feeling really nauseated as I started walking around there. And then this thought form and this sort of like felt sense knowing came online of like I don't want to leave. Like I'm not ready to leave yet. Like I'm not ready to leave. Not me, like of not wanting to leave this land, but like this sort of like leaving upward kind of feeling that I was picking up on. But it felt so awful that I just like got in my car and just drove home and took this shower right away because my body was just feeling so awful. And then I called one of my friends who I've been on the island for 6, 7 years, and then also pulled out my Google Maps. And she had confirmed that like she had actually done ceremonial rituals there in order to clear energy. And when I looked on the map, it's right next to the hills. It's one of the sacred sacrificial sites that the Hawaiian priests would use, I think about 200 years ago, would actually make human sacrifice offerings to gods. So, like, what I was feeling were some of the remnant energy of those experiences that still live in the land today. So, like, that pocket of energy is still very much alive and still there and can be felt. So I found that to be really interesting. Um, Another time I was walking on the San Juan Islands, which is near off the coast of Washington State. It's this subset of islands that were used to be indigenous land, but now have become um, half of it's very developed for vacation homes and has become more commercial. But there's still pockets of it that's still preserved with a lot of just pristineness. Um, so I was walking around and I was really just asking this sense of guidance in some ways of how can I really get in touch with the land more and learn from the land. And there was this one particular forest along the coast. And when I walked there, these particular images and feelings were filling my body. And it was really giving me this deep understanding of indigenous consciousness, really of this sort of interconnection with the land and the animals and how our survival is so deeply interdependent. Like, I understand now why the natives will say that the animals are their brothers and sisters, because when I was sitting alongside the cliff of the ocean looking across the sea, like it viscerally felt like, our survival was so interdependent because we're constantly living in the same land and same area. If we are endangered, the animals will be endangered, and vice versa. And there's this ecosystem of interdependency. And then also just this kind of felt knowing and of some of the memories of images of the native people who have lived there before was kind of filling my body. There was like a different felt texture, felt sense, you could say, of that. And so, in some ways, it felt like the land was holding some of that indigenous knowing and consciousness. And because it's so not touched, the way of seeing and perceiving and living still lived in that pocket of that land. And I was walking through the forest, was able to pick up on it. Um, and so, in some ways, the word trauma and trauma healing has become really fairly mainstream now. Everything is really a trauma. And we know that trauma lives in the body. Um, and when it's undigested, those experiences and memories creates this energetic field of heaviness around a person. Um, and I just feel for me through these experiences with land and earth, it's a sense that there is also an earth body. There's the earth body that is sentient and also holding undigested experiences and memories. And it's this collective human history memory that is held in the earth body. And that also needs digestion and mating because it creates an energetic field of the land. And this is also true for the intuitive information, the different thought forms, beliefs, and the wisdoms that is also stored in the body in addition to the trauma forms. And the last part I will share about is the country and culture. So in my personal experience, countries and cultures also have collective energy fields. So I've been traveling in the US, living quite nomadically for the past 4 years, and also lucky enough to have traveled all around East Asia and Southeast Asia for the first half of this year to explore really indigenous roots for myself as a Chinese American. Um, and the places I've lived, I experience my consciousness interact very differently with every place I live, and habits and sometimes emotional charges and behaviors even change depending on where I live. And my sense, this is my hypothesis, is that the energy of a place is made up of the collective experiences of the people who live there in interaction with the historical um, informational field of the place, the history, and then the energy of the cultural norms that kind of bind um, everything together. just like a quick example is like, for example, I remember World Cup. I don't remember what year it was, but I remember walking outside that day and just like feeling this really lightness and joy. It was almost like this just like joyful anticipation as like I think the entire world was, you know, tuning into that the game that was happening. And it was just this entire energetic, larger global container that was happening, because so many people around the world were tuning into that one particular event. It was creating this energetic, particular emotional energy, of joy and excitement. And I remember like kind of walking in my neighborhood that day and then just jumping and leaping and skipping and almost like humming. And I had no idea why I was experiencing that. And then I was remembering, oh yeah, okay, this larger event around the globe was happening. Um, and then now I'll talk a little bit about the different land places I've been to and then what my personal experience is there. Again, all of this is anecdotal and I'm not making like any definitive statements. I'm just kind of sharing this is like what I've experienced. This is what my hypothesis is. And this is what has really piqued my curiosity because of my personal experiences. I felt that places with more sparse um, populations, and more nature, to really deepen my state of consciousness and awareness. And this is also true for higher elevations, like really high elevations, thousands of feet in the mountains. So I lived in Taos, New Mexico for a few months. And I think for me, the high elevation is about 8,000 feet up in the air, and then open vistas and canyons. So, like, open, very, very wide spaciousness, which opens up my way of seeing, like this peripheral way of seeing, because instead of like a modern day human, really hyperfocal, hyper focused way of seeing, like every time I stepped out of the house, I was seeing the whole landscape and it opened up my spatial view and peripheral view. If you guys are aware of any of the Tibetan practices, they have something called like sky gazing, which you literally just like look up in the sky and open your view and practice that way of seeing to open into the larger spacious awareness so that your consciousness maps to that spaciousness. And for me, being in that high elevation, always opening to this peripheral view of seeing, and then also the native influences. Taos is a heavily Native American populated location, and I would say doesn't have a lot of mainstream American cultural influences. All these things combined, I felt like so much easier to drop in a deeper state of awareness into my meditation. Just much easier to live into my meditative self and into deeper awareness. And then I also lived in Hawaii, like I said. And when I first got to Hawaii, I just felt that my energetic container began to expand. And then, like, with that expansion, there was just a lot of shedding and fear. As soon as I landed on the island, a couple instances happened where, like, for example, I almost drowned in the ocean, where, like, just a large surface amount of fear came up and I was shedding that fear. And then through that, like, I felt my energetic bodily space also mapping to the huge capacity of space all around the island. And think about it, like we're surrounded by the ocean. So there's the buoyancy of the water, and then there's the spaciousness of all the spaciousness of the ocean, Pacific Ocean around me. And so my body, the waters inside my body was resonating with the waters of the oceanic waves. And then also the spaciousness of my body was resonating and expanding into all that spaciousness all around me. And I think that caused this sort of bodily and energetic expansion, that just like also helps greatly with healing and releasing of emotions. And yeah. Um, and then, in Hawaii, there's certain parts of the island, on the Big Island, there's even a road that's called Mana Road. And if you've ever heard of the word mana, M-A-N-A, it's what the Hawaiian term means, like the spirit, the energy of something. And they refer to there being mana in people and objects and land. And it kind of maps to similarly to like what I've been sense making of that mana. And there's on Mana Road, I like hiked in certain parts. There's one sacred volcanic mountain, and Mana Road's on, this side of it. And then when I walk to certain parts of the Mana Road, it really again drops me into a deeper state of awareness and consciousness in that land. Um, so I found that to be like really, really interesting. And then the third place I also spent some time in was Bali. And when I first landed in Bali, I just felt this like heat uprising from my body, like from underground, this like drastic heat moving upward. And it's like a lot of sizzling, a lot of energy, because Bali is on volcanic land. So that energetic charge from the volcano is moving up through the body and interacting with the body. And in some ways, just like really filling me with energy and excitement and this kind of outward pouring. And also makes me much more extroverted and in interaction with the world. And also, Bali is really influenced by Hindu animism. So, a lot of it, the culture has so much rituals and honoring of nature and practices. And I'll show some pictures later. And that also feels like it's really contributing to that kind of aliveness. And um, the energy in Bali just felt so coherent and felt easeful and so peaceful. Like the entire land just felt like it was filled with a lot of um, it was very energetically held. Yeah. And then when I was in East Asia, in China and Japan, like the energy fields of the country felt very deeply suppressed in different ways. Um, China felt very suppressed emotionally, and like the entire, at least the country, not the country, the city I was living in, it's very urban. Like it felt um like the energetic soup was just very thick and very dense. And because there's a lot of emotional suppression and not a lot of space to really process feelings, and also there's a huge suppression of voice and truth. So I think that really contributes to the container China feeling like heavier, like the thicker field of trauma that lives in that country. And then Japan, it felt suppressing emotions in like a constrained, restricted way out of politeness. Um, China felt more shame-based, but Japan felt like more of a constrained, um, like culture, really strong culture codes. And yeah, it just felt like it was out of consideration for the whole of like I need to sacrifice my own individualness deeply for the sake of others. And therefore it's harder for me to fully express. And I think without that suppression, expression, there's also like that emotional suppression that's happening. Um, so I say all this really to say, like, Lynn talks about this so much, right? Like we are interaction. We are interaction. We are interaction. Like we're constantly in interaction with everything else around us in this sort of energetic way, whether we're conscious of it or whether we're not conscious of it. Some of us more sensitive than others and picking it up on a conscious level, but like we all have that intuitive felt sense where we want to go closer to somebody, or we want to get away from somebody, or we want to go somewhere in nature where we don't want to go somewhere in like we don't want to go to certain places in the world or around us, right? So this inside outside constant exchange is happening, and I just find it all like so fascinating. And then clearing fields. So when we're working with trauma in the healing world, the trauma needs a voice, and the experiences need to be spoken of and to be seen and to be felt. And it needs to be melted through the body. And so I feel my sense that it's also true for collective trauma fields that's frozen and held by the earth. And the places I've visited, the ones that felt the most energetically coherent, what I mean by that is like it just felt the best to my body, where my body's like, ah, I can relax and land here are the ones that are indigenous, like indigenous lands or places where indigenous practices are still being practiced. So the Native American lands in Taos, Bali, and the Hawaiian Islands. Um, so they're really places and people and culture beliefs that still held like a deep relationality with land. And they build that relationship through rituals and ceremonies and offerings and appreciation for the land and really seeing the beauty for the land. And they also have, at the same time, like that nature-based relationship. There's also like a relationship with the world of unseen. Um, so like an animate tradition, you can say. And the relationship with the spirit world or ancestors um, and that kind of ongoing maintenance really, I feel like makes the land like feel more coherent and also even more beautiful. Like sometimes you step on that land, my vision just becomes clear and I see more beauty, and my body also feels better on those lands. Um, and for homes in Bali, like they have altars for every form of God. They have a garden altar, and they have a home altar and a family altar. It's like they're the way of keeping the home as well. It just feels like there's some sort of energetic maintenance that's happening ongoingly, and like it allowed my body to rest in those places. And then this is also true for some in Malaysia as well. Like there's also like a lot of the Chinese descendants have carried on some of the traditions that Cultural Revolution had wiped out in China in the mainland, but kept it ongoing in Malaysia. And you see these earth altars for the earth spirits, and then you see these altars for the home spirits, and there's just a way of maintenance and interaction in some ways that's happening. Um, yeah, so my sense is there are just these ways people historically have created containers for like building relationship with land and with spaces and with the unseen that has changed the energetic texture of where they live. But it seems to be mostly forgotten in the Western world and mainstream Western world. And yeah, it seems to be what I feel keeps a place coherent. And so I was thinking to myself, like, most of the people I know these days probably would measure how nice of a place is by how luxurious and how fancy materially it is. And we want to, of course, body wants to live in a comfortable place. But um, I think something is also about like how energetically coherent is a place. Like if we become more sensitive and feeling that, like that is a totally different way of measuring um, a place in some ways, right? Like, and for my body, I become dysregulated in a field that is incoherent. And the way I think, the way I perceive the feelings, emotions that I feel in incoherent fields are just like vastly different than a coherent field. And if we're talking about like so many people experiencing mental health challenges, um, I think there's an almost like a overemphasis on the individual experience and like an underemphasis because we've forgotten these larger practices of relationality with land and the world of unseen that may influence the collective fields, collective trauma fields that particularly may need our attention these days. And I wonder if we actually paid attention and brought back some of those rituals, practices, and perceiving of relationality with how that would really change the collective fields and how that would change how the land and the spaces we live in feel. And then how would that change um, the state of mental health um, on a collective level? So that's something that I've been living into, but these practices, like it's so easy to live into some of these practices in Bali because that's just built into their culture. Um, and I'll share a little bit of what the practices look like next, but it's harder to do here because it's not wired in the culture. But what would that look like if we were to bring that back? So I will share some images and so let me take a sip of drink real quick. Okay, so the top left, if you have been to Bali, you see these, they're called kanan saris, and they're offerings that are put out with like flour, food, padan, the green grass, and incense. It's just like filled with beauty. It's like taking the beauty of nature to offer back to the beauty of nature. Every day they light incense, they use water, and they make a prayer back to nature, like, and make a prayer for themselves, and then like a blessing and offering to the larger space around them that deepens the relationality. And they put it everywhere, like in the middle of the road, in all the altars in the homes, in front of shops. You see like a collective group of people doing this every single day, and sometimes like at different times of the day, and just something really beautiful to witness. And then the picture in the middle, I'll show you a picture of a video of the ritual last. But the picture in the middle is me going to one of the holy temples to get a water purification. And the Balinese goes almost like every 6 months, like collectively as families. Water is a purifier, emotionally, energetically, psychically, physically. And then you're washed and bathed in the holy water. And that's a form of a ritual. And then to the right, the two pictures are from my own family in China. The top is like these Chinese people believe in feeding the ancestors and spirits. So the top is like us burning paper money to the land and house spirits of the place, the house that my aunt lived on. And then the bottom right is actually the feeding of food to the ancestors, our lived ancestors, um, through celebration. And they do this twice a year. Just so you can see like what she's doing. She's putting on her family altar, and she's putting in the incense, and she's dabbing in water, and then also wafting like that incense to the space, into the space around her. And then she's placed the kansari on top of the altar. All right. And then this is also, this is from Malaysia. The left is a place where ancestral worship takes place. And I just want to bring this up because I also went to ancestral halls in China, but it was absolutely devoid of energy. It just felt dead to my body. But in Malaysia, I could palpably feel like it felt like my body, I felt a lot of goosebumps. Every time I went to an ancestral altar, and it literally felt like there was a connection to the other side. And it's hard to viscerally describe, but the body just felt like I felt chills. I felt there was a lot of movement of energy in a way, because that relationship is deeply fed by the Malaysian Chinese that haven't been ripped apart from their cultural roots, the way a lot of times mainland Chinese people have, because of the Cultural Revolution. And then to the right is Malay Chinese. They call the god they make offerings to Datuk, and it's a form of earth protective god and also a wealth god. So they make offerings to this altar every single day, and I see it in front of Chinese homes, like Chinese Malaysian homes. Almost every single home had this altar on their property. And then this is in Japan. And to the left is like an altar that just lives out in nature. I felt it was really beautiful. Japan's very much influenced by Shintoism, which is another animate view. Like everything is sentient and has spirit. So they make a lot of offerings out in nature to nature. Um, and then there's also a deep practice of elemental purifications, just like in Bali. And when the top right is picture of when you enter into before you enter into a Shinto temple, you wash your hands with water and you also take a sip as a form of purification. And then the bottom is a practice, Goma ritual in the Buddhist practice in Japan in particular, where fire is purification and also fire is a delivery um, vehicle of messages to the spirit world. So you would take these wooden planks, you write your prayers on it, and then you go and throw um, the wooden stick into the fire. That's facilitated by the monks. So, yeah, just really interesting how elements are brought in. And then these are two pictures. To the left is from Taos, New Mexico. It's this place, Llama Foundation, and it's been there since the 60s or 70s. And the forest behind the foundation, it's a lot of ceremony by the native elders are done on that land. And as soon as I walked on that land, it just felt like the land was magical. There's so much beauty. It felt like walking into Narnia, like behind the closet, and like everything just felt so alive compared to other parts of nature that I trekked on. So whatever they're doing on that land, or I don't know what is happening, it like really beautified it and enlivened it and created more magic on the land. Um, and then on the right side is a picture from the Big Island of Hawaii, the Mana Road that I was talking about. Just so incredibly potent with land energy and beauty. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Abby.
yeah.
And you've given us such rich material here for us to take in. And maybe we need a minute just to take in what you're showing us. And then see what there is in us that we want to express and be this interaction that we're talking about. Such a complex amalgam of taking in from the environment, from you, Abby, and what there is in us that is being given out, is being exhaled, and how those are sort of indistinguishable in interaction. We're making the environment, and the environment is making us. So let's just open it up to whatever there is in any of us to say.
Can I say something?
Oh, absolutely. We don't have to ask.
So much talk about land is making me, is I feel like maybe words are not needed. Like when I saw felt sense exercise, I went like, yes. I feel like I need to do some experiential right now just to digest the amount of land that we've visited.
Yes.
I just cannot go into words and more words right now. So I'm just putting this out there. Thank you
Yeah,
for
it
listening.
was a lot.
Yes.
Uh,
June.
yeah. Question. If you're doing a walking meditation or ritual, do you have to be barefoot for it to be meaningful, or can you wear shoes?
I'm not an expert to tell you, but I think I definitely think I feel more connected when I'm more barefoot to land energy. Like the earth energy can be felt, right? Like even in Chinese culture, we talk about earth energy as a palpable thing. But yeah, I find there's more of a flow through when I'm barefoot. I don't do it very often though, to be very honest with you.
Right.
Yeah.
I found it interesting to sit here and listen and realize how my sense of identity is shifting from being me, Henry, the individual, to the boundaries are expanding and I'm becoming part of, or I'm already part of and seeing maybe that I'm more part of. So that was an enjoyable shift in my awareness.
I'm glad that the sharing had that effect on you. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
I'd like to put in my 2 cents. I would very much appreciate doing the felt sense exercise as opposed to going into breakout rooms.
Mm.
Thank you, Gray.
Mhm.
Notice that we're speaking as our individual selves with our history, with our place, with our rooms, all of that. And we're speaking as part of this group, this interaction. So there's something about Gray saying that, and also Margot saying that speaking for the group.
I also want to say how much I like it, Abby, that you give this very clear presentation about what that is, an energy field. And I was also wondering about when we are here in this Zoom meeting as a group, I'm also very aware of the energy field that's here and now between us. And sometimes I'm struggling with that. So I'm very happy that you address that very important interactional field that has its influence on each of us. And I really want to be aware also in this kind of meetings, what's the kind of energy field that each of us can sense in the here and now about this. So I'm very glad that you mentioned this very important issue.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mia. I was wondering if you could say more about the struggling with the interactive field.
Is that the question you asked me?
Yes, yes, Mia. I just wondered if you could say a little more.
When I'm present in this kind of meetings, I have this sensitivity for each participant coming in with specific energy. And some of these energies, for me, are difficult to relate to. Other of the energies I feel invited to interact with. So, and I try to stay out of judgment about what's going on and to notice how the energy field a person brings in resonates in me. And the struggle is about having this very diverse fields of energy with each person.
Mhm.
And,
Yes, that sort of basic struggle of us being interaction. We're made of interaction and all the diverse energies. Yes, I see that struggle.
Abby, I just want to say I so resonated with your presentation and enjoyed it. And particularly when you were talking about water and food offerings. You know, I went to the beach I just really resonated when you talked about the ocean and really feeling one with the ocean. And last weekend, I need to go to the ocean often. And last weekend I went and I started speaking to my ancestors. And I don't really relate to the word ancestors so much, but I was feeling that feeling. And it's in Hindu culture, it's Pitu Pakshu at this time, which is a time to honor your ancestors with food and the likes. But I wish there was more time to really have time to dig deeper into this. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you. And I would also love to do the felt sense exercise. I'm just sharing. Yeah. I was like, oh no, where are we ending?
Yeah, I love that that urge like naturally came up for you. That's so fascinating for me. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Okay, all right. So that was also a lot of talking for me. I feel a lot of energy in my brain and upper body right now. So yeah, so I'm inviting us to take a deep breath together if you would like. Maybe one more breath. Okay, I'm inviting you, if you would like, to close your eyes and just take a minute to notice where is the most activated part of your body. Where is your attention? And where's the energy most alive and concentrated? Is it in your head? Is it in your heart? Or is it somewhere else? And just noticing if you have your feet on the floor, just noticing the surface space contact between your feet and the ground below. And can you notice as you bring your awareness down into the ground, into the actual earth below you, to allow the earth energy to move through upwards through your feet so you can receive the nourishment of the earth. And then also letting your own energy move down through the feet back to the earth. The circular reciprocity. And then also noticing your seat being held by the chair that lands on the earth. So being this gravity connection of belonging here on earth. And just noticing the space around you that permeates you. And the invitation is for you to kind of connect to the energy of the land that you're on. Could be a mountainscape or oceanscape or urban landscape. Just just a larger field of energy where your home is or where you currently reside. And just noticing if there's any nourishment. And if there's anything in your particular home field that feels incoherent, you can send that to the earth and the nature or landscape for it to hold for you. Just noticing how your body feels. And now we're going to collectively come back and just take whatever nourishment and spaciousness and the grounding earth energy of support with you in your body memory. And then come back to the group whenever you're ready. So maybe we can slowly come back together, and then we're going to create breakout rooms. Christine, can you do that for us for 10 minutes, I think?
Yeah, do you want to be in a room, Abby?
I'll be in the main room.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody that wants to stay in the main room with Abby can do that too.
Yeah. So I suppose we're the ones staying here in the main room. I wonder if anyone wants to share anything from their experience or want to say anything, or yeah, the floor is really open.
I think what came up for me is a question about being coherent. It's a very powerful word to me. And as you used it, like it felt like a thread or a theme. And it's something I have difficulty grasping at times. It just comes when it comes. I don't feel the control over it. I don't feel a choice sometimes. I feel like it just comes as it comes. And but I know I have a longing for it. And I think what came up with your talking about the importance of the space around you, like your home. Now I'm in one room and that it's chaotic. And my body just went like, oof, like, how do I quickly change this? There was a pressure. So I'm just very interested in these concepts. These thoughts are very compelling.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also like, for me as well, I think the place that feels the most coherent always is nature. Nature has a natural capacity to cohere, and especially large swaths of nature. And in nature, I often feel like that seamless flow through, or I lose that separation of self quite easily. That oneness comes much easier. And also I find people who've really anchored into the bigger field of awareness, what they call awake awareness, they often carry a field that's deeply coherent. And when I'm in their presence, my body's in interaction with their body field, I feel I'm cohered as well. And also for people who have a really deep resonance with the earth, land energies, often the native people I've encountered, I feel they have a much more rootedness than most Western people. When I'm near them, I also feel more anchored to the earth and more cohere. But by myself, oftentimes I'm still very influenced by the energy field of incoherence. Yeah.
I like that word coherence. It reminds me of the psychoanalytic concept of our fear of fragmentation and our desire for our deep, deep, deep need for integration, for a sense of coherence.
Say something.
Hmm?
Abby, I'm a play therapist. I do sand play, and every single miniature that I have has some story attached to it for me. And it's so interesting when the child or the adult reaches for that, I can feel there's an interaction at a felt sense level, and I don't know whether the other is picking up on that, but it's very alive for me.
You're saying when they reach out for it, you feel
When
that
they pick something, every little bit and bob that I have has a story for me. And I have some things from my childhood. So if they reach for something, I have the first miniature that I bought with my first allowance. So when they reach for that, a whole story comes alive in me. And I wondered if the other person is sensing that.
That's a very interesting thing. Yeah. I wonder if you have, because I find that it's almost like how I relate to an object then creates that emotional field. Then I'm transmitting that emotion to the object as well. So in some ways, maybe there's a emotional charge around the object, and that is the field that it's holding that then could potentially create that attraction for your client. This would be my hypothesis, yeah.
And I'm also aware of that. Am I putting out extra energy because this little deer means more to me because I bought it when I was 8 years old than anything else in the collection? So it's a sort of awareness level for me, how alive everything is.
Yes. Yes, yes. The animacy of everything.
Yes.
So thank you for your presentation, because I've lived in Hawaii and been to Taos, and so I had another sort of journey, thanks to you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
I love that, how alive everything is. And that seems like the deep message that you're giving us.
Mm-hmm.
The interactive field is alive and everything in it. And we can't parse what's coming from where. It's not possible, like the elements of oxygen and hydrogen in the air.
Yeah, that intersperse oneness. We're
I-
all in an energetic soup, regardless if you like it or not.
We have the energy of a cat here.
Yeah.
I was thinking about an exercise that we've done when we've been in person, where everybody just makes themselves at home in the room in their own space inside themselves and picks an object and then relates to that object and becomes the object, and the object speaks to them. And then those objects in the room from years and years ago are alive with what they became for that person. And I have them all over. All of these objects that are alive because they spoke to someone.
Yeah, I feel like your shares are also adding to my understanding or perspective of that form of animacy. Yeah.
This word alive made me think of Joseph Campbell's thoughts of what we are all seeking may not so much be a meaning of life, but the rapture of being alive. And when we are talking about this now, and I shared with you guys how my sense of identity became broader as from hearing this presentation. With that comes also, I notice, more of an aliveness. It's almost like this is what life is.
What I also would find a very interesting exercise is how you can develop the awareness level that we have of our own energy field. Because that's, for me, one of the most important interactional aspects, the energy field around the person we embody. And being aware of that is something that I find very important.
Yes.
There's also such an art of energy hygiene, and then also energy politeness, like energy manners in some ways, because I'm very sensitive to this. Like, for example, the way we pay attention is how our energy flows. Eyes channel tremendous amount of energy. And then for most of us, the energy field is about an arm length in all different directions around us. And if I am looking at somebody and I'm intently looking at them at one particular spot, inside that edge of the sphere, they can be an intensity of energy moving towards them, which can then become very overwhelming. But if I'm witnessing them through the peripheral lens and also at the edge, meeting them energetically at the edge, there's a little bit more of a safety and distance in that interaction. And so it's very much about like us being aware of our edges and energy spheres, as well as like being aware of others' energy spheres. And when we're interacting, like, because mental thoughts and energy is so intertwined, there's also a way of knowing how to separate between you and others and how to work with energy to send it down and clear out. It's something that I'm personally exploring as well. But yeah, there's a lot there.
Let's welcome back people who were in the breakout rooms, and would love to hear from you, what
I think
you
I saw
discover.
narrate.
Abby, thank you so much. It was really beautiful what we've done. But I wanted to ask you something. So I grew up in the Middle East, where the land is a place of dispute and fighting and all of that. So here's my question. Like I might be teaching a workshop there in Israel, and part of the workshop that I use is like grounding.
you know, how you ground into the earth. But in my imagination, the earth is a place of dispute and blood.
Mm.
And I'm not sure that this is the right thing to do. I mean, I was asking myself before I heard your presentation about that.
Mm.
And I wondered if you just have something to say about that.
Which country?
Israel.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting, especially given what's happening now. You know, Israel is also a country with a lot of history, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of ancient wisdom that came from that land. And I
Yes.
think the same with China and India. Both countries hold a lot of ancientness and that's a lot of trauma. So I think it's almost like with some of the chaos also has inherent wisdom within.
Beautiful.
How to tune into energetically and attentionally to those deeper holding structures of culture and history, and also ask for support from the land, spirit of the land that can be of support to you. And then it also matters where you are, like, are you near, because not all the entire land of Israel is going to be incoherent. There will be nature pockets that are very coherent, and then there will be urban pockets or historical trauma places that's deeply incoherent. So it's about where you are as well and choosing wisely.
That's be a more of an urban. If it would be my choice, I would love to do it in the desert, but that's not.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like it's going to happen there. So yeah, but thank you. Yeah, that was very. There was a rich way to access that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I also really appreciated that, Abby, because it isn't like the energy is a thing, you know, that it just is. It's infinite, and we pick up the dimension that that we're tuned into. So when I begin a session with a client, I'm very aware of the energy of the client. And then I'm learning how to be aware of the client picking up my energy. So when I pick up the energy of the client, it's not just like that's the client. That's what we're making together. And
Yeah.
picking up dimensions, and they're picking up dimensions, and that's we're not just receptive, we're also expressive.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the other thing is something I'm actively working on is how can I anchor into a particular frequency of energy. It's an active working process, because if I can be more anchored in, say, the field energy of love, the collective field energy of love, or the collective energy of stillness, then typically energy coheres in those fields. And can I be a field for that in myself? And also, where am I placing my attention? Because if I'm placing my attention on incoherent, chaotic things out in the world, incoherence in me. Like if I'm constantly paying attention to news in the US right now, I'm contributing to that field of chaos.
Yeah.
And how can I anchor in a different frequency?
I'd just like to validate that, Abby. Very much enjoyed your talk. And for Nurit, I remember landing in Israel for the first time, and my focus was the sacredness of the land. And the minute I landed and stepped on the land, I said, oh my goodness, I've never felt anything like this before in my life. And there are places, of course, you know, urban areas like Tel Aviv, but sacred places like Jerusalem. You go to Jerusalem and you are overwhelmed. You almost like your energy doesn't even have a chance not to be overwhelmed. So I just wanted to share my personal experience.
Thank you. I'm with you on that.
So, yeah, maybe if anyone has any, we can take one last share before we go to poems, Lynn. What do you think?
Sure.
I just want to mention how my awareness improved about responsibility and responsibility in being aware of the frequency you bring in, but also being aware that each of us is able to change frequency in a space. And that's for me an issue of responsibility, not just on the personal level, but also on a worldwide scale. So I'm so happy that you introduced this power of working with the energy field.
Thank you.
Beautiful note to end on. Very nice.
Yes, really.
Can I say one more thing about all this? One of my teachers, I think David Spinkler is the person who coined the term, and my teacher learned from him. He calls it sacred, subtle activism. So with whatever is happening out in the world right now, you can, go out on the streets or take active participation in activism, but there's also a form of energetic activism that can happen inside of us. It's like there's a energetic, like when you go really deep in that meditative place, like it does feel like everything's connected. So we're really connected on that level deep inside when you drop into vast spaciousness, luminous place, stillness, and then it slowly manifests out into the outer world that is still connected energetically. And so there's some like different layers in which we can go to do the activist work of contribution. Yeah.
Abby, I would love to hear more about that one time. That would be a whole nother, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So that might be a topic for the future of energetic activism. I love that. Maybe we could have a panel on that. Okay, Dorothy, I think we're ready for our poem.
Okay. This is what Avi is giving us by, I believe, Linda Hogan, Dwellings, A Spiritual History of the Living World. Walking, I can almost hear the redwoods beating, and the oceans are above me here, rolling clouds, heavy and dark. It is winter, and there is smoke from the fires. It is a world of elemental attention, of all things working together, listening to what speaks in the blood. Whichever road I follow, I walk in the land of many gods, and they love and eat one another. Suddenly, all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the results of the love of thousands.
Wow.
That is a wonderful poem. It goes so beautifully with this presentation. Thank you so much, Abby. And thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Beautiful, Abby. Yeah, good to see you again.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.